If nirvana is freedom, why stay behind? You reach the end. The path is clear. No more craving, no more becoming, no more suffering. And then you turn around. You look back at those still wandering, still burning, and you say, I will not leave until all are free. That's the Bodhisattva vow, and it changes everything, because suddenly liberation is no longer personal. But here's the paradox. If nirvana means no attachment, isn't choosing to stay still attachment? If self is gone, who exactly is choosing to help others? The two ideals, Arahant versus Bodhisattva, in classical Theravada. The Arahant seeks personal awakening. Enlightenment is freedom from rebirth. Goal, extinguish suffering, attain final nibbana. In Mahayana, the Bodhisattva postpones final nirvana out of compassion, not clinging. Goal, awaken with all beings, not alone. Two paths, two aims. One is vertical, get out. One is circular, come back. The question is one superior, or are they just different expressions of the same truth? What kind of freedom leaves no one behind? Imagine this. You're on a burning ship. You find the exit. The fire is behind you. You're safe. But you hear crying. You go back. Did you fail to escape, or did your freedom become love? The Bodhisattva doesn't fail to exit. They don't need to anymore, because for them, freedom is not distance. Freedom is not isolation. Freedom is non-attachment within the world. Does staying mean you're still bound? This is the core tension. If a Bodhisattva says, I vow to return until all beings are free, isn't that a desire? Isn't that attachment? The key, what drives the vow? Not ego, not fear, not spiritual ambition, but pure compassion, not as feeling, but as function. They don't act from identity. They act because it's what arises when self drops away and only care remains. Cliffhanger. Is liberation lonely? Let's ask something radical. If total freedom means being alone in the stillness of nirvana, is that truly free? What if awakening is not the end of connection, but the full birth of it? What if the highest state is not silence without others, but presence with them, without needing anything from them? Canon versus compassion. Are they even at odds? In Theravada texts, Arahants are praised for liberation. Desire is to be extinguished. Final nibbana, no more birth. In Mahayana sutras, Bodhisattvas take vows across eons. They embrace rebirth as needed. Even a blade of grass can become Buddha nature. Is this contradiction? Or two languages for the same emptiness? One says, don't cling to form. The other says, use form skillfully to free others. The Lotus Sutra, fire returns to warm the forest. In the Lotus Sutra, we find the ultimate reframing. The Buddha himself says, I never truly left. My nirvana was just a teaching device. I remain invisible, guiding beings. The Buddha plays a role, not because he's bound, but because he's free enough to return. This is not selflessness as void, it's emptiness that acts. The Bodhisattva doesn't say, I'm trapped. They say, I am free, so I stay. Shantideva, the vow without a self. Shantideva wrote, may I be a bridge, a lamp, a boat for all beings. May I be food for the hungry, rest for the weary, light for the lost. And yet, he also taught emptiness. There is no giver, no gift, no receiver. So how does someone with no self still vow to help others? Because when ego drops, compassion flows, not from identity, but from silence. I vow does not mean I exist. It means this vow arises because there is no longer anyone in the way. Compassion beyond self and other bodhicitta, the mind of awakening, is not sentiment, mission, heroism. It's the natural echo of wisdom. When you realize no one is truly separate, all forms are empty, yet suffering feels real. You don't act because someone is suffering. You act with the suffering because separation is gone. There are no beings to save, and yet the vow continues, like wind through an open field. Cliffhanger. What if staying is the highest letting go? So here's the paradox. The Arahant leaves out of freedom. The Bodhisattva stays out of a freedom even greater, because to leave and disappear is peaceful, but to stay, knowing there's nothing to gain, and still walk into the burning house, that is love without agenda. That is wisdom without escape. Bodhisattvas in human form, not ideas, but lives. Forget statues. Forget golden stories. A bodhisattva is a mother sitting by her sick child all night, a monk refusing nibbana until his disciple sees clearly, a stranger who holds your pain and asks for nothing in return. They're not above you, they're beside you, and sometimes they're you before you remembered who you're not. The story of Tara, the vow to never be reborn. Male Tara was a princess. She meditated, attained deep realization, and was told, "Now take rebirth as a man so you can complete the path." She laughed. "There is no self, no male, no female. Only clinging makes such illusions real. I vow to always be reborn as a woman until all are free." Her bodhicitta wasn't passive, it was radical. She chose form not as identity, but as compassionate expression. Milarepa, from revenge to return. Milarepa was a murderer. He used black magic to destroy those who wronged his family, but remorse shattered him. He found Marpa, trained under brutal conditions, renounced all status, and when he attained realization, he didn't disappear. He sang songs of freedom, songs of clarity, songs that helped thousands rise. His voice was not his, it was the Dharma, echoing through what remained of him. The 84 Mahasiddhas, city meets street. These weren't monks. They were farmers, drunks, prostitutes, outcasts. They attained realization in the world, not away from it. And instead of retreating, they played, laughing with ghosts, teaching with riddles, liberating with dance, food, fire. Their compassion wasn't polite. It was wild, unapologetic, exact. Because once you are gone, what's left is just response, real, spontaneous, free, cliffhanger. What if awakening doesn't escape the world, but loves it into freedom? So now we ask, what if the bodhisattva doesn't stay behind? What if they never left? What if the true sign of awakening isn't withdrawal, but the unshakable willingness to return again and again without ever needing to be seen? The selfless act. How can love survive without a lover? If there's no self, who loves? If there's no one, who stays? This is the secret of the bodhisattva. They don't love as someone, they love as clarity. The distinction is subtle and everything. Not "I love you," but there is love here and no one blocking it. The ego gives gifts to feel generous. The bodhisattva gives because nothing is held back. Form is not the enemy. It's the canvas Buddhism teaches. All form is empty, but it also says emptiness is not other than form. The bodhisattva lives right here, holding a crying child, smiling in traffic, typing an email with kindness, cooking a meal for someone who forgot your name. They don't act beyond the world. They act within it, with no ownership. Form is not a trap. It's an opportunity for wisdom to move as touch, word, gesture, non-dual compassion, acting without actor. Imagine this. Someone falls in front of you. Do you calculate your identity before helping? Of course not. That moment, pure, direct, uncalculated, is bodhicitta. Not "I help because I'm a good person." Not "I help to fulfill my vow." Just there was falling, and these hands moved. The mind didn't insert a self. It just allowed the Dharma to move. This is non-duality in motion. The hand that doesn't hold itself. The bodhisattva doesn't sacrifice. They offer, not painfully, not dramatically, but the way a tree offers shade, the way fire gives heat. Because when the I is gone, giving is what's left, not to fix the world, not to save it, but to serve it, moment by moment, without ownership. And paradoxically, this is the highest form of freedom. Cliffhanger, what if there's no contradiction at all? So now we ask, if action can happen without a self, if compassion can flow without identity, if return can arise from freedom, then maybe the bodhisattva is not the opposite of liberation. They are its full expression. What does a bodhisattva look like today? Not all bodhisattvas wear robes. Some wear jeans, scrubs, name tags, a school teacher staying late with the struggling child, a nurse in the hospice ward, holding trembling hands, a cashier who meets rudeness with presence, a protester, not with rage, but with clarity and calm. They don't say, "I am enlightened." They say nothing, but their eyes say, "I'm here with you, fully." Return is not regression. To the untrained eye, a A bodhisattva looks like anyone else. They feel pain, they get tired, they forget things, but inside, there's no one left who resists the moment, no one left needing escape, no self left to protect or promote. They return again and again, not because they must, but because there is nothing stopping them. Modern examples of awakened return: Thich Nhat Hanh, exiled monk who founded a movement of peace, returned to Vietnam knowing it might cost him everything, taught, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Deepa Ma survived profound loss, child, husband, chose not to run from pain, sat with students in silence that healed through presence. Tenzin Palmo spent 12 years in Himalayan cave, emerged not to boast, but to teach and empower others. None of them clung to return, but none of them fled it either. The world called, and they answered, not with ego, but with presence. Bodhisattva burnout. Is it possible? You might wonder, but isn't this too much? Always giving, always returning. Yes, if there's someone giving, but the bodhisattva doesn't burn out because they don't own the giving. They rest, they breathe, they eat, they say no, not from guilt, but wisdom. They know compassion without self is sustainable. Action without ego is effortless, like wind moving a leaf, not forced, just flowing. Cliffhanger. What if returning is part of full release? So let's ask again. What if liberation doesn't mean leaving? What if full release doesn't pull you out of life, but back into it, open-eyed and silent? What if the final gesture of freedom is not to go, but to remain, for no one, as everyone? What if returning doesn't require a returner? When the self dissolves, there's no one left to come back, and yet return happens, not as decision, not as effort, but as natural unfolding, like waves coming to shore, not because they must, but because that's what waves do. No one says, I will save them. It's just help appears, unclaimed, unmoved, pure, acting without a center. How does it feel? You walk into a room, someone is crying, you sit beside them, no words, no ideas, no plan, just breathe, just warmth, just space. There is no one doing compassion. There is only compassion happening. This is not absence, it's availability, a presence that has nothing to prove and nothing to lose, the flame that lights but doesn't burn. Some people fear that giving will exhaust them, but only if you're giving as someone. The bodhisattva doesn't hold fuel. They are flame, fed by nothing, needing nothing. The moment asks, they respond, not with strategy, with intimacy, not to succeed, but to complete the gesture of clarity. No resistance equals no friction equals no heat equals no burnout, just pure light. The paradox fulfilled, the more empty, the more alive. Here's the mystery: the less you there is, the more fully life can pass through you, the quieter your mind, the clearer the answer when someone says, help. This is not spiritual theory, it's lived, and it feels like gentleness without identity, joy without ownership, service without sacrifice. Because when you're not trying to be anything, you're finally free to respond to everything. Cliffhanger. What if liberation was never meant to be private? So let's ask, if enlightenment only ends your suffering, is it complete? What if awakening only becomes full when it overflows into others? And what if the one who returns was never gone at all? No one left, and yet the hands still move. There is no one left to help, no me to do the helping, no other to be helped. And still, food is cooked, doors are opened, silence is shared, eyes meet. This is not denial, it's radical intimacy, not I'm here for you, but here is presence, unclaimed but unmistakably alive. When the path disappears and only love walks before there was effort, I must awaken, I must help others, I must embody the path. But now, there's no path, just walking, no practice, just living, no vow, just movement, no spiritual identity, no final destination, just action without self, like wind that never questions its direction. Is the bodhisattva lonely? Number, because there's no one to be alone, and yet there is connection deeper than self, sitting beside someone in pain, feeling what cannot be explained, knowing and not needing words. There is silence, but not coldness, stillness, but not absence. It's the kind of stillness that wraps around you like a warm shawl in winter, not because it wants anything, but because that's what warmth does. The absence of self is the presence of everything. Without a self to center, the entire world fills the space. Every sound matters, every gesture echoes, every being is met, not as other, but as momentary truth. You don't love them from yourself. You love them as the moment, not as a virtue, as inevitability, because when there's no barrier, there's no distance. And when there's no distance, compassion is natural. Cliffhanger. What if there's nothing left to oppose? So now, the final turn. If the bodhisattva doesn't resist form, if they don't cling to emptiness, if they don't hold a self or abandon the world, then maybe this was never a contradiction. Maybe they are what remains when every contradiction has been loved into stillness. Not two, not one, just clarity. The Arahant walks out of the burning house and disappears into stillness. The Bodhisattva turns around and walks back in, smiling. Are they different, or is this just another illusion of choice? Maybe the one who stays and the one who leaves were never separate. Maybe freedom takes on form because it no longer fears it. No merit, no mission, just motion. You no longer say, I serve, I vow, I sacrifice. You just do what arises. You don't own goodness. You don't track karma. You don't stand on a pedestal. You bow, you breathe, you offer, and no one sees it, not even you, because when there's no self, even the gift disappears into the wind. The question dissolves. Only presence remains. So, does the Bodhisattva contradict full liberation? Ask the fire, ask the silence, ask the open hands that hold pain without flinching. There is no contradiction when there's no one left to be conflicted. There is no tension when movement is effortless. There is no delay when time has dropped away. The one who stays has nowhere to go. The one who helps needs no name. The one who loves has never been separate. Don't follow me. Don't follow the Bodhisattvas. Don't follow the Arahants. Watch the breath. Watch the world. Watch the places inside you that still ask, should I go? Should I stay? Should I disappear? And when those questions quiet, you'll feel it. A step, a glance, a moment, unforced, unaimed, unowned. That's what's left when freedom becomes love, and love no longer needs a self.